Good morning, everyone. This is an introductory video for EDAD 6845, week number 9 on media relations. And it's also the week where we'll introduce the community leader interview portion of your revised community relations plan assignment. Although nothing's due for that assignment, that portion of the assignment this week, I want to just sort of lay out the purpose and point you to some examples and some resources for conducting your community leader interviews, which will be due in a couple weeks here. First off, school media relations. Given the rise to the sort of national media spotlight of education in the last few years, particularly in the New Orleans area, the media has been heavily involved in covering stories about schools, and you've seen a lot more front page newspaper stories on education than perhaps you do in most other cities. We've also been a magnet for some really good education writers to the city who have been tracking some of the Orleans parish reforms and now are around in town writing on schools and other things. You'll read the chapter in Kowalski this week dealing with media relations. It looks at the media relationship as just that, a relationship with the people. Adam Norris, who's the director of media relations and PR for UNO, usually comes to our in-person class when we meet on campus and talks to us about how to engage in relationships with the media. And one of the big takeaways I've had from his meetings is that you develop relationships with the people who work in the media, not the media as some abstract entity, which I think turns our attention to the right things, which is finding out who the people are that are covering the schools, making sure we know them and that they know us, and starting off the relationship on a positive note rather than getting a call on a Sunday night when some documents have been unearthed that might portray your school in a bad light and you're meeting somebody for the first time. Obviously that's not the way you want to start the relationship. So part of the role of schools, I think, is being proactive in how your school is managed. It's also, in the age of Twitter, Facebook, and constantly upstreaming websites, how can you put your good news about your school out there without having to rely on the traditional media outlets, which still carry a lot of sway, but we're relying on others to tell our stories when, in many cases, we can tell our stories yourself. I don't think the Kowalski text is as good as some of the new technologies for getting our stories out there, but they're really good in their just sort of overview of the relationship between educators, schools, the media, etc. So I want you to read that appropriate chapter in Kowalski. I also placed 3 Word documents in the course docs folder on recent negative news stories from the last couple of years at schools, in a couple in Orleans and Jefferson. And I want you to read all that and just respond in your dialogue post this week about both those articles and put yourself in the shoes of that school leader and how would you respond. And also, how does Kowalski's sort of framework for understanding the relationship between schools and the media play out in those specific cases? And also bring in your school. What's the media presence in your school? If you have any recent media reports from your school, I would love you to link those in your response as a hyperlink, and then we can check those out. And I'd love to hear what you don't usually get in the media reports is what's the follow-up? Did this get much play at the school? Was it instrumental in getting a grant down the road, or did it really upset people for a long time, or did it really not get noticed, or whatever the case may be? So if you, in addition to your post this week, if you have any media reports from your particular school, then you can sort of tell us the backstory on them. I think that would be interesting for folks. So that's your media relations component, and that's the focus of your discussion post this week. There are some other assigned Kowalski readings, which are dealing with community and qualitative interviewing, which you don't need to write on in your responses this week, but are to get you prepared to do the community leader interviews that are part of your final project, and this week is sort of the kickoff of that. So the overall objective for the community leader interviews portion of your assignment is to get the perspective of non-school people on the school, how it's functioning, and the relationship with the local community. You can talk all day to people in the school and the parents in the school, and you're missing a huge voice if you don't have influential people from the neighborhood that have an impact on the support your school gets, the resources your school gets, the general attitude towards your school. The more you can influence that, the better, and you can't influence it unless you know where people are starting from. So this is your assignment, to go out into the community, find influential leaders, and ask them about your school and what it ought to be doing and what resources it ought to be plugged in with, what relationships it might have. Not to say that your school automatically is going to do what these folks want, but you're initially building bridges with these influential people so that they know your school is not just showing up at 8, leaving at 3:30, going to page 45 in the textbook and doing some problems, that your school is actually a living, breathing community entity, that if your community is going to be stronger, then this school needs to be stronger, and the two need to operate in relationship with each other, in partnership with each other, as we've said over and over this semester. So I think this assignment will be interesting, and it will give you some good data for your revised school community relations plan. It gives you a sort of a forced opportunity to meet some influential people in your community in the practice of getting this assignment done. You'll get some face time with these people, and you'll also be doing some really positive PR just by going to these people and asking questions as a member of your school community. You'd be surprised at the positive goodwill that generates for your school down the road as you all move forward in your careers, either in your current school, other schools in your local community, or even if you up and out leave that community. I think that positive results from completing this assignment go much further than just writing the paper at the end of the semester. So you'll select 5 to 7 community leaders. These should not be people who are on the payroll of your school staff. That way you can get some honesty. They could be business owners. They could be elected officials. Your school board member for your school is fine. They're nominally paid usually. I'd like to see alumni from the school, pastors, retired educators are okay, but the turning point on whether you invite someone to an interview or not should be, is this someone who's held in high esteem in the community? Is this someone whose opinion is going to carry some sway? Because it makes sense for us to talk to those people as community liaisons from our schools, because they have wide reach. And so a pastor and a business owner and an elected official, they have wide social networks. And so when our good news is coming from their mouths, that sort of makes our job easier. So in the end, the role or the formal authority a person you interview has isn't that important to me, but that they are an opinion leader in the community, in whatever segment of the community that might be. If you have any questions on who might be a good person to ask, feel free to send me an email or with a list of potential people. What you'll do when you write up your interview is you'll give about a one-page double-spaced summary of each of the interviews, not giving question answer, but giving just a narrative summary of your take on the interview and how it went and what you learned. So you'll have 5 to 7 pages of that, and then a couple pages at the end where you'll pull together some of the common threads that came out of the interviews, or perhaps some divergent opinions that you need to think about as a school. If people are thinking the school needs to go this way, and you can't go both, then how do you square that as an educational leader? So in all, this is going to be about a 10-page component when it gets turned in as a part of your final project, and this will be one of the great data sources you use for developing your revised plan, because you're going to really get some time to talk to these people. Some of the things you need to prepare are interview questions. I've posted a sample list of interview questions you can draw from, add to, as you wish. It's on Moodle. I put 2 sample community leader interview write-ups, the full 10-pagers, from previous students on Moodle. Take those out. That gives you a sense of how you should write this up. There's also a document called Class 9 Plan Interviewing that's from an old course, so some of the information on there is not pertinent to you, but down lower in the section is a list of directions for how to create good interviews, and I think that's worth using it before you go out and do this. Some of you, this may be your first time conducting a formal interview for an assignment. So, you have those resources in Moodle. This is not due immediately, but because you need to schedule these people, by definition, these are influential people who have probably their calendar is relatively full. You need to start thinking about who your list of 5 to 7 are going to be, contacting them, getting on their calendars, finding time where you can go interview them. You don't need to audio record the interview. Some people may choose to, that's fine, but just take notes so you can use those to draw into your final report. Any questions, and you can feel free to email me or stop by office hours, and I look forward to seeing the discussion on school and media relations this week.